ready to strip down healing from illusion. My name is Kerri Lewis. I am a mental health addiction recovery coach and speaker, and I am partnered with my beautiful and incredibly gifted co-host, Michelle. Go ahead, share your stuff.
I am Michelle Barone with Microaggressions Coaching, and I do emotional liberation. That's right. We work on your emotional intelligence as well as everyone around you so that you don't fly off the wheel when you get really, in those pressure cooker moments. So that is what I do. And we have a guest today. We're both so excited. So, Lanita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Lanita Mitchell Blackwell. I'm an attorney and intuitive business coach, author, and speaker.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. So, quick ditty. I've done an interview with you, so my audience should have some insight into you. But how do you go from lawyer to intuitive business coach and author and speaker?
So I never left the law. Actually, this is 17 years for me with my firm. And I was thinking about it. I graduated from law school 20 years ago in May. I was just like, how is that possible when I'm only 18? I mean,
I know,
really,
right? Oh, I'm telling you, the universe is good.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But what wound up happening, ladies, is that I had a transformational experience where I realized that I was using success and accolades and awards, recognition to replace my identity and ideas about self worth and how I felt about me.
Yeah.
And once I went through my transformation, and it was a very spiritual one. Um, I realized that there were a lot of people who were going through what I was going through. And as I opened my heart to the divine and let God talk to me, um, I was able to hear things from the other side of the veil that were specific to the person that I was interacting with.
Mm.
And I had an experience once with one of my legal clients during a regular meeting that we had, and runs a multi-million dollar company. So this is someone who takes her business very seriously. And I just told her an answer that she had asked her mother, who I'd only met one time, but who had crossed over 6 years prior.
Yep.
And obviously I wouldn't know what she's saying to her mother during her
Mhm.
prayer. And I was able to tell her and give her that answer. And it was from that point that I realized I'm like, the only person shocked about me having these skills and gifts is me,
Yeah.
because it didn't shock her. She wanted to know more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I just started integrating that in everything that I do. Now, obviously, I'm not, just popping up in court with that, right? But
Oh,
I
come
put,
It,
on.
it could make it really interesting.
yeah, I like my license. I got to keep that.
Yeah.
But it makes for a much more genuine and authentic interaction and experience with
Yeah.
people that I have had the pleasure with knowing. So
I
yes.
love that. You've never shared that with me. And I think that is so beautiful. And
Mhm.
I think what I love most about that story is that you trusted yourself to say the thing
Mhm.
that came to you. And I think so often we're all gifted, we all get messages, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
we let our ego say, who am I to say that? Where is that coming
Yeah.
from? You know what I mean? And then so we don't allow ourselves to be what I truly believe the miracle for the person because we filter ourselves. So I think that is a really profound story.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I agree, Carrie. The trust to verbalize it, to let it go, and I love that you are welcoming in the fact that you're a vessel and just allowing what's coming through. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And Carrie, you said something that was really profound when you were talking about the ego. One of the things that I had to explore during this process was the fact that the ego is not a bad guy or a bad gal. It is protection.
Yeah.
It's incredible training, Positive Intelligence, last fall, and the creator of it called basically the ego the judge. And the idea is that this persona within our egoic um, profile framework, right, is there to protect us from harm. And many of us, the voice is very harsh because that's what we learned when we were small. We touched the hot stove. No, don't touch. It's hot. Well, we didn't understand the protection of that. We just were just scared as little people.
Mhm.
Oh, I shouldn't touch that. It's hot. It's bad. And we slowly but surely developed these little parts of ourselves that were specifically designed to protect us, but sometimes they hold us back from the things that we're supposed to do. And so we have to embrace that part of us and say, thank you, I appreciate you. That's not helpful in this situation,
Yeah.
but I still appreciate you. And I'm not telling you to be quiet. I'm just saying that right now, that's not what's going on here.
Oh, you are talking my language. Because that's exactly what I go over with clients is you can't get rid of the voices. You can't get rid of the helicopter ego that's, hovering above you. And I love how you phrase that, because that's exactly what came into my mind was, oh, so some people's egos are helicopter moms. and
Yes,
and some are, they're getting a little bit loose, but absolutely. And you have to be able to embrace them and work with the
yes,
ego, work with your emotions, because
yes,
you can't sequester them. You can't keep them quiet,
yeah.
because they come back raging.
Well, this is not where I thought this conversation was going to be, but
No,
of course, that's the way the universe works, and I love it.
But
So
that's the beauty of strip down.
true. But I had this profound moment yesterday in yoga, right? Because I was working with two spiritual coaches, and then I stopped, right? I literally this week, and I realized that I had been working on my Kundalini energy to become enlightened or have Christ consciousness for the reason that I would be free from emotion. And I'm in yoga, and I had a revelation. It really was. And it's not that, you can be the most spiritual person and you are not free of the human experience. And
that's not
that was why I was working toward achieving this quote unquote status in my spiritual journey. But that, um, really all I have to do to experience the joy and love that we are all meant to co-create from. And don't get it twisted, like we are co-creating in the likeness of the universe. That is real.
yes,
The only thing I have to do to co-create in the likeness of love is to be free from judgment of the human experience. That's it.
yes,
And that's
yes,
what I got. And so there is no, and this is where my addiction and mental health coaching comes into play with people. And I've known this for a really long time, but it kind of tied into my own journey yesterday, is that don't judge, get curious. It's all about learning and playing and having fun with it. The
yes,
minute you associate any experience, right, with good or bad, you have now condemned yourself and your brother, and that is truly
Yep.
the crux of what I believe to be connected with source energy. But the minute you come back to love and you're just like, ooh, that's fun, then you're immediately continuing to co-create in love.
Curiosity
yeah,
did
I
not kill the
totally
cat. Go ahead, Linda. Yeah.
No, no, no. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just saying curiosity does not kill the cat.
Oh, I totally agree. And that return to love, Marion and
Mhm.
Williamson, that's exactly right. I remember doing the Course of Miracles. What was that, about 4 or 5 years ago? No, 3 years ago, because it was in the midst of COVID. And I remember thinking to myself, if we brought that energy in every aspect
Yeah.
of our lives, wherever we are, business, personal, self, the
Mm-hmm.
world would be such a better place, because we would realize that the person operating that human machine, because that's what the body is doing the best they can, what they understand the world is to them. And
Mm-hmm.
they might be a very young soul with not all of the instructions worked out. And they are struggling. They are really struggling. And it's not to diminish our frustrations with them, because some of the things that people do, they have a serious impact upon us.
Mm-hmm.
But once we have the understanding, it does allow us to pray for them, to treat them with compassion
Yeah.
and love, but without minimizing what we're feeling as well.
Yeah.
And there's power in that. That's our power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And going back to what we thought we would actually be talking about, that's a huge point though, because I'm a newbie with Course in Miracles. I'm not done by any means. I actually started with the disappearance of the universe, and it took me 10 years to get through that because I kept freaking myself out. But now I'm devouring everything. But my what it's brought me to understand is that what happened in corporate America with me, to look at that differently, to reevaluate it, not to go back and feel the feels, but just to reevaluate what happened and see it for what it was,
Yeah.
which was a play. And all the characters did
Yeah.
very well in the play. They all should get awards, and including me, the producer, director, co-creator, that that promoted myself out of a job and then ended up committing the career beep unliving, I guess, because Krista warned me not to say the S word too much because we could get tagged. But so it, and then the forgiveness
Yes.
of the narcissist that I worked under,
Yeah.
because it was all meant to bring me here.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here.
I love that. I had to go through a similar situation. And what my last job in corporate, I was actually a litigator. And I realized that that job was a compilation of every job I had had prior. And it allowed a life review. So a review within the review.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized as I was going through it that the purpose was to let me know that we won't revisit this, and to give me a 360-degree view. So I experienced it early in my career as me. Now I'm on the other side of this and I can see it from their perspective, even though I am still in the employee role and they are in the supervisor, director, owner role. Um, I can feel what they feel. I feel the confusion and the frustration of life not turning out the way that they had in mind, of the dream unfulfilled that we were all taught. I believe we were all raised by the same community. If you work hard, you become successful, you'll be happy and live happily ever after, and ever after never came.
Yeah.
And you're 50 or 60 and you have the cars, you have the house, you have the clothes, you have the hot spouse, and there's still something.
Mm.
When is happy going to come through? And I shared with Kerri, I was like, happy is never coming through. Never. What you have always been seeking is joy. And
Yep.
joy is an inside job.
I love that. I love that. And I love what you said. I read some things. I was looking you up.
I
But
like the way you had Kerri. She was like, I was looking you up, like I wasn't stalking you, girl. I just need to make sure you're okay to come on my platform. I hear you.
what you said about going back to kindergarten, and if we just applied what we learned in kindergarten, and I have been saying that for so long.
Yeah.
And even when you talked about your grandparents instilling the thank you, excuse me, and please, that's something that is not everybody remembers.
Yeah.
Not everybody uses it.
Yes.
And it's funny, even with technology, and my kids used to hear me with freaking Alexa. I'd be like, Alexa, can you please? And they're like, you don't have to say please and thank you. And I'm like, but it should make you.
Yeah.
What world would we be in? What would it be like right now if we actually were teaching that? Like
Yes.
these kids are talking to these machines and they're just demanding
Yeah.
instead of, at least we could have added a little human into that humanity.
Well, and it's interesting because I actually do the same thing. I recently switched over from Android to iPhone, and I'll say, "Hey Siri, blah blah blah," and she'll come back, and I'll say, "Thank you, no problem, you're welcome." I'm just like, I really like this. Google never did that. Google was just like,
No,
"Let's get this done and move on," okay?
no, 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 never did, never did. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we have all those turned off. I use Siri though. I do use Siri.
I love this. It's so funny because I'm sitting back and playing the role of the observer right now, just to kind of to feel into this. And it's interesting. I was just with my niece yesterday. I took my daughter shopping for a performance she has later tonight, and my niece demanded that I get her something, and I looked at her. I was like, "I'm not the one. I'm not the one." I'm like, I was like, first off, nobody owes you anything. This my niece is 6 and I love her to death. She's so brilliant. But I'm like, second of all, nobody's going to respond to you if you talk to them in with an expectation that your needs get met, because they're not always going to get met. And my daughter who's 14 looks at my niece who's 6 and was like, "You don't know my mom well."
She's gonna learn. She's gonna learn.
Oh yeah, we're actually pretty close. I think she just needs to test her limits.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to, so to the audience, we kind of alluded to what we planned on talking about, and something that we all have experienced as people who were employees and who worked within the structure of America's business model, whatever that looks like, whether it's within law or whether it's within, business organizations such as retail or the health industry. We've all experienced a lot of moments where there's been passive aggressiveness or microaggression, which is, not advertly behaving in a way that could really make sure that that you're not respected, you're not seen, you're not valued. And so I kind of want to dive into that because I think it's really important. All three of us are coming from a lens of love and compassion
Mhm.
right now. So in a bigger holistic picture, we totally get the fact that that is, that was the work that we had to go through
Yeah.
to learn and grow. Also, the experiences these people need to go through to learn and grow. However, it doesn't take away the fact that in that moment, at that time, it hurt like hell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, Lanita, can you talk to me about, because obviously, Michelle and I have discussed in our different respective careers how, I was passed up for promotions because I quote unquote didn't have a college degree when people had massive amounts of less experience than me. And I know Michelle is experiencing. What have you experienced maybe that had left you feeling uneasy or unseen? And how do we start to shift the culture?
Yeah, so I have had many experiences with sexism, racism, ageism, um, and they all come back to the same thing, and that is
Mhm.
fear. Those people were afraid of my light. And at that time, like you said so eloquently, Kerri, it does not take away the burn,
Hmm.
period. What I had to come to, though, was a two-part understanding. The first is that whoever was standing on that X was going to get it. That person had already made a decision when they woke up how they were going to show up in the world, and whoever was standing in their pathway was
Yeah.
going to catch it. And at that moment, it was me. And they picked a reason. They selected a reason that was independent of me, had everything to do with them as to why they were going to behave the way that they were going to, which led to the second part. Once I understood that, it stripped the emotion from it, and I was able to
Yes.
look at it from the perspective of, okay, I have my power. What am I
Mhm.
going to do? Now, in some situations, it was nothing because I already knew that that job was short term. And I was just there for one thing, to get my money. Now I'm
Oh,
just being
yeah.
real with you, ladies.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to be your friend. I'm going to be cordial to you because I wasn't raised by a pack of hyenas. I was raised by a loving community. My mama is going to see this and she is going to want to know that she raised her child well,
Mhm.
right? Okay. Um, for some situations, I reported it. Sometimes it went somewhere, most times it didn't. But there was now a track record, there was evidence. So when this happened the next time, it wouldn't be able to be blown
Mhm.
past. And that is one of the things I think that a lot of us fail to remember, that we're not here just
Right.
for us. That when we fail to say something, that it allows this person to continue walking through the world, and there is nothing on the record, no
Mhm.
speed bumps, no warning signs for the next soul,
Yep.
right? And that means that in a large sense, we have failed. And so we're going to have this
Yeah.
experience again. The person will change out, the circumstances will change out,
Love
but that
what
lesson
you're saying
is
Yeah.
that. You're
coming
spot
back.
on because
Yeah.
that is so
Yeah.
pervasive with our whole
Yeah.
life. But yeah.
Yeah, and I really want the audience to embrace that this is not a
Mhm.
punishment. Our lives are
Mm-mm.
for us. They're not against us. They're not to punish us, to downgrade us. They are joy. They are love. Our lives are for us. It's a gift.
Mhm.
And so that means we signed up for this iteration of it. There were things that we said we
Mhm.
wanted, experiences we said we wanted, so we could evolve into the being, the total complete being that we wanted to be. And so when we miss it that first time,
Gonna
there'll be
come
another
back.
time. And once, right? And then there are blessings beyond that. Even if it hurts in that moment, once we get it, that means that we get to bypass something else that may have been
Yeah.
created for us, but now
Yeah.
we don't need it.
You know, I want to just take a moment because when things went down and I had to call, I was in charge of a philosophy. Wasn't a department, it was a philosophy. It's very hard to manage non-people. And
Yeah.
but it was something that I was honored to take over from the person that created it in the organization where I was. But that person, uh amazing as he is and taught me so much, actually was the one that gave me the book Disappearance of the Universe, way back when. He called me after things went down, and because
Mhm.
obviously he had heard, and I had reached out to kind of give him the heads up, but he called me months later and he said, you know what, I knew, I knew that there was a target on the philosophy's back, in turn my back at that point, and I did nothing, and I apologize. He didn't need to do that.
Mm.
He did not need to do that. We all knew that the target was on our back, but he didn't need to do that. He maybe for himself. I will say it was
Yeah.
nice that I wasn't crazy. It did
Yeah.
validate that I wasn't completely insane, because at that point, and some of you out there that are dealing with this right now, if you're feeling like there's a target on your back, tap into it, get curious. Don't go at it from fear, but look at
Yes.
it in love and go, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? And what's going on with the other person that I can manage so that the collateral damage to you isn't as bad? There's a lesson in there, but what is the lesson?
Yes.
But also, don't
Yes.
feel crazy and don't feel like you're alone. Don't go hide under your desk and cry, because I did that a lot. Don't do that. Reach out for help.
Mm.
Yeah. They should make special desks for that.
All Kleenex.
Because I think all of us have had that
Yeah. What kind
experience.
under a desk? Yeah, I mean, I created a
Yes.
meditation space and a boxing space in my last company because
Wow.
by then I was so clear. Well, because I worked in the retail space, and not only is it high pressure, but I knew my employees had to navigate all different energies, and you need to be able to release that energy in some way, shape, or form. And I want to give them a space. But something I'm curious from both of you guys, because my throat chakra has been open since I came out the womb, right? So, like, I'm listening to Lanita, and she's like, "My mom didn't raise a hyena," and I'm like, "I don't know about me. 'Cause I might have been more." You know what I mean? Like, because for me, I always said something. Like, I always, and I'll give you a good example. I mean, there's hundreds that are swimming through my mind, but I remember a passive aggressive leader, me going up saying, what do I need to do to get promoted? And she's like, oh yeah, when I leave, you have the job, blase. Fast forward, she gets promoted and they promote somebody else. I held her accountable. I pulled her in the office and I said,
Mhm.
I take issue with the fact that you were not clear. You did not set expectations. You didn't give me a clear line as to how I could go from where I am to what I was seeking. And then not only that, I feel really misled. Now I have said that a million times, and in my more youthful years, there was a lot of expletives and a lot of zero tact ever. So that hyena really came out. But um I was punished immensely for it, but it never stopped me from speaking that truth. And I really believe that's God's gift to me. I do. I actually teach speaking your truth all the time for that reason. How, because I don't get this lens at all. I can't not say the thing. Like, it's like the elephant in the room. I'm calling the elephant out in the room. How did you navigate being in these environments, and did you say something and then just report it after this person didn't adhere to what you shared, or did you just kind of say, well, they're not going to see it from my lens anyway, so I'm just going to report it? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, there were times where it was all of the above, none. I didn't do anything, and sometimes I spoke up. And Kara, I would be remiss with if I did not just say very honestly that as a person of color, that I walk a very thin line when it comes to reporting things, because even there, though there is validity in what I'm saying, there are people who are always going to color it. Oh, it's because you're
Or a strong
black.
black woman.
And, I
I
mean,
feel like black women in particular, like, if you're loud or boisterous or whatever, oh, you're being a loud black woman. I
Mhm.
get that all the time.
Yeah. So I have had to be very careful. Like I specifically remember this one organization that I worked with, and I came to deliver my resignation to human resources, give my 2 weeks. And the manager asked me why. And at that point, I felt my heart open up, and I was like, she is asking, I'm going to respond in the same spirit of generosity. Let me give her the real reason. And I watched this wonderful person turn
Mm.
pale, and I watched her shoulders just hunch. And I felt like I had just unloaded on her. She had nothing to do with anything that I had been through with that company. And she really wanted to do something about it. But I felt terrible that I had basically dumped all of that on
Yeah.
her shoulders. She asked me to write it down because she was serious. Boy, if she had lasers in her eyes, she would have mowed that place down.
Oh
I'm
man.
serious. She was
Yeah.
mad. What? Um, but when I did, I then felt
Yeah.
down, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Even though everything that was listed on that sheet was true. The fact that when I walked by a partner in the hallway, that woman clutched her purse like we weren't two
Wow.
professionals in a building. When we were in a team circle, they would not make space for me to step in and made me stand
Yeah.
outside the circle. It was one thing after another. And I was just like, I think this experience is for me to have said something. I don't believe that I'm going to have to encounter this again. And I believe that the experience was for her to hear it from someone who wasn't blaming, was just being very factual, like this
Mm-hmm.
happened. And for many of these things, if you pull up the security
Yeah.
cameras, you'll
Yeah.
be able to see them,
Yep.
right? And then once that experience was over, neither one of us had to have it again because now we have the frame of reference, we have the
Awareness.
feeling. So we will, exactly, and we will never sit in a room and allow that to happen to someone else. This is not about putting on the cape and being Shira
Mm-hmm.
for someone, right? This is about being a loving
Right.
human being. Love won't let you watch somebody be mistreated like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was on a walk, and I always listen to stories, and this was this uh deaf woman. She's an actress, and she was sharing the experience where her husband's a physicist. They go to a
Mhm.
conference. All these brilliant physicists are on the stage, all men except for one woman. And to you, much like you were saying, right? All of these men were being highlighted. They had the opportunity to share their
Mhm.
work, whatever. But as soon as this woman finally had a chance to speak, the moderator was interjecting, whatever, whatever. So the woman telling the story, the actress, finally was so like she could not sit and bear witness to this anymore. She said, "Please let her speak," and you hear the entire audience, and they showed it. It's recorded. Start like lets out this audible sigh of relief, like right. And thank God, somebody said the thing, and I have no doubt much to that moderator probably it was implicit bias. He was unaware of it, but until somebody said
Mm-hmm.
let her speak, he would have no lens to realize that he was being ignorant.
Mhm.
And so what I love that you did was
Yeah.
you shared this with this woman, and I'm kind of like that woman, right? Like and it's to a detriment because it's not always my job to fix. It's to bear witness, to
Mm-hmm.
recognize, to have the
Yes.
conversation.
Yes.
And to guide,
Yes.
right? Guide them what to do next.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
we can't do it if we don't know. And I think
Right.
that's why when you and I originally started talking about microaggressions in the workplace, we really talked about healing from them,
Mhm.
right? And so
Yeah.
I think that this leads really well into how did you lovelies start to heal from the experiences you had, honoring them but not allowing them to, I don't know, like taint your experience maybe, or just kind of continue
Yeah.
to impact you adversely now.
Yeah. For me, I went to nature. To me, my husband's like, get up out of bed. You've been laying in bed for a for a while now. It's been a week. It's been you need to get up. You need to do something. And I lost my identity. I mean, to paint the picture a little bit, and to go back to the first question, how did I not? How do you? What do you not? When you can't say something, right? I did. Like, I talked to so many people and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, if she doesn't like you, you're done. You might as well start looking for a job." Like,
Which is so
and they were okay with that.
yes,
And I was like, "What?" And 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 so this is what happened in the one-on-one. Oh yeah, that's how she is. And so, I mean, it was like a joke that we called her Satan's mistress because that's how she acted behind closed doors. And that was the thing. So when they brought in Christine Porath and brought in the speaker of the book of incivility and said, we need people to speak up. We need you to come forward. You all are the leaders. Do something. Okay. Well, now you just gave me permission and you told me it's part of my job and I'm going to protect my philosophy, right? That department that was so important because she's dismantling it piece by piece and I was watching it. And so I remember the moment that I made the decision and I stood up and I walked over to her boss and I told her what had happened. She told me to go to HR. I went to HR, bring all of the documents. I had everything lined up. They did not know what to do with me. So they tried to put me on a performance improvement plan. But it wasn't my performance that was the problem. It was my existence. Right. So there was a lot and losing, not knowing who you can trust. That I think that was what I had to heal from, was losing that and wanting to protect so many people. I mean, I unfriended people on LinkedIn and Facebook and stopped talking to people because I was afraid of the retaliation to them, not to me, to them. And so I did speak up, but I remember when you were talking about speaking up. When I was a kid, I was probably 10, and there was a big family drama, like huge, knockdown, drag out, mom in the kitchen, surrounded by her siblings, and everyone was just, "You're horrible. You're this." Blah 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 blah. And I remember looking at my mom and going, "Can I say bitch?" And she was like, "Yes." And I went, "You're a bitch." And I remember screaming it at my aunt, but I asked permission first. I did say please, but I had to speak up. But it also created that people pleaser. So it takes me a lot to get there, but once I get there, I say what I need to say for the reasons that are for the right reasons, the integrity that behind it, and then I move forward. The healing, it took a lot of healing. I talked last week that I reached a huge pivotal moment that I can look back at those pictures now and see the joy in the job, see the joy that I had in that career that was 10 years. It was magnificent until it wasn't. And it took me, it was 2018. It's taken me a bit. It's taken me a minute, but it was something I had to process and go through. And it wasn't just corporate. And we talked a little bit about this, Kerri. I've been, I worked with a couple coaches, and let me tell you, there was some interesting personalities behind the scenes. So you're right. We're as we're talking about this, it will come back. If you don't process it and handle it right then and there, it will come back. You will have to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
The players' faces just change.
Michelle, you said something really interesting. It was great until it wasn't. I think the audience can really learn that that's when it's time to go, when it's not fun anymore.
Yep.
When you're crying under the desk with the
But too often we don't listen to that. And that's when the universe will say, "Oh, baby, you're going to listen because you're going to have endometriosis, or you're going to be in a car accident, or you're going to get laid off." Like, it's absolutely true. But I'm curious about you, Lanita. I think what you said is so profound, Michelle. And, the healing, I don't think the healing ever stops. I really want the audience to hear this.
Different levels.
Because I was listening to you talk, and immediately everything that was flashing, like, was like the Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu. If you cannot share your experience free from emotion, there's still healing to do. That is just real. The minute there's no emotion, there's no anger, there's no anything. It is a part of who you were to become who you are. That's when you're healed. And I don't know, I know for me, I ain't done healing. So for the audience, I would just say that when things come up and there's emotion behind the story that you're telling, just recognize that's a gift. That's a beautiful gift that gives you the opportunity to be like, ooh, what do I have to unpack? And ultimately for me, it's all about forgiveness. It's a forgiveness of thine self, because when you forgive thyself, you forgive everybody else.
Yep.
But I would be curious
Yeah.
about your experience as well, Anita.
Yeah, so for me, the moment for me came when I was able to leave corporate and start my
Yeah.
own. I had gotten to a place where I understood that it was never them, it was me. But the reason that it was me is because it was time
Yes.
to go. I came in for specific interactions and experiences. And once those were achieved, it was time to move on. They were to create compassion and empathy and a spirit of advocacy, uh, be battle tested, become a
Yep.
warrior, but a lover as well. And to understand that there were different tools that I could use in my efforts to be not just a good person for me, but for those that I love, which includes my community. Excuse me. I think the most telling experience that I had was um, when I moved to Atlanta. I was working with one of the larger companies here, and Michelle, you and I, we had a similar experience because no matter what this person did, they would not
Right.
do anything. And I was so frustrated one day because she actually followed me to the restroom to go off. And I'm just like, man, I think this is a setup. Yeah, I
Because there's
really,
no
really
cameras
do.
in in
And
the bathroom.
right, right. And so I was talking with one of the older employees there, and she said, "Oh yeah, she has something on somebody high up." And but the way that she said it, it was so like, yeah, it's a fact. And I think that's what was going on
Oh
in
yeah.
your organization, Michelle. There are so many people in these companies that know where bodies are buried, and there is fear in disciplining them because they will let it out. These organizations have to get to a place where they're just like, you know what? Let me put it
Mm-hmm.
out there.
Yes.
Let me remove your
Yep.
power
hmm
from you so that we can do something
There
about
shouldn't be
you.
anything to cover
Because
up.
Well,
If you're in
well,
integrity,
no, 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 no. Wait a minute. Can I share a story about that real quick? Because that's not true. So when I was in Nature's Remedy, I
mhm,
really wanted to create a very diverse workforce. And there's this
hmm
narrative, diversity, inclusivity, blah, blah. And I had this young black male, amazing. I had such an affinity for him. And at the time they were doing marches for Black Lives Matters because I don't even know, one of the countless people had been killed, and he asked to go to it. And I said, absolutely, be safe. You never know what's going to go on. So in that, I found all this diversity and equity training. And so I collectively got a lot of my leaders together, and any employee of color to go to this diversity training. Where my ignorance was, I didn't invite the white people. And I totally get it now. But in hindsight, it's 2020. And so anyway, I did this, and I was so proud of myself because I really wanted to make an inclusive environment. But so fast forward, I don't promote this specific person because his mental health wasn't in a place I couldn't. He used that to berate me, eviscerate me, slander me throughout the entire community and whatever. And so for me, having the integrity I did, I responded in turn. I said, yes, this is what I did. I take responsibility. Like, I did come from the lens of love, but it came off ignorant. And I totally get that. That takes balls, right? That took so much courage.
yes.
I remember crying doing that. But to do that, and so most people, it's not that they inherently do something bad. They're fearful of being judged, which I knew I was going to
Yeah.
be looked down upon by certain people. But that it wasn't the point. The point is I could not live in that like shame or guilt. I knew that I came from a good place. It fell short, of course. Most companies allow the fear of how they're going to be perceived, create that environment where there's fear. And so
hmm
that's what I want to say, because you can have situations where it was seemingly innocent, but it wasn't ideal, if that makes sense. And that's
Mhm.
what I want to touch upon for you, Michelle. But anyway, go ahead, Lanita. Sorry.
You
I
had to
had
get it
That's
it.
out.
right. That's right. But just real quick, but because I don't want to lose this, but Kerri, that's such a lesson for everybody else to remember that shit happens, mistakes are made, learn from it so it doesn't happen again, and be happy that that experience happened. And so many of us would be like, "Oh God, I hope that never comes up." What a
Yeah, but
moment.
Michelle and Kerri, we're not
Yes.
taught
No,
to
we're
do that.
not. We're
We're
not.
taught to we don't talk
Nope.
through things when they happen. We're taught to just go
Mhm.
on, and then you look back and you can't understand why when you leave a job, people don't stay
Yeah.
in touch because we were just trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
survive. You look back and you break up with people and you don't understand why they're not happy to hear from you years later because y'all didn't really end on good terms. You just went on your separate ways. There should not be, at least this at this point of consciousness, there should not be those types of
Mhm.
interactions in the workplace or
Right.
outside of it. But yet
It's
there
so
are.
pervasive. And so I guess that
Yeah.
leads me to, I mean, so you left your practice, you speak
Yes.
to that, but I also, with 12 minutes left, because I know I can go on a
Oh, we
tangent
could go on
forever.
for another hour, I'm
Uh,
sure.
I want you to share what tips and tricks you would encourage our community have to start to change that narrative, at least within themselves, within the organizations that they're experiencing microaggressions in, because it is, unfortunately, it is still quite pervasive in all areas of life.
Well, so the first thing is we have to realize that we can't change anybody else. It all is
Yep.
happening here. So that's the first thing. Once we realize that, then the second thing comes true, that we understand that those people's behavior is not personal to us. That is
Huge.
what they have happening
Mhm.
within them. So once we are able to get to those 2 points, we can strip the emotion from it, and then we can come at creating some type of dialogue or strategy about what we want to do. For instance, I was on a panel Friday night, excuse me, and it was on allyship. And there were 4 men and 2 women, and I was one of the women. And specifically, we were talking about how men can be better allies for women in
Love
the
that.
workplace in
Mhm.
corporate America. And one of the gentlemen named as one of his accolades the fact that he was a co-chair of one of the employee groups for African American professionals. And after, he was finished talking, the question came to me, similar to what you're asking, like, what else can be done? And I said, well, one of the things is, what are you doing specifically to move an entire group forward, not just one person? Because you have an entire division under you. So are you just picking folks who you think are cool and then helping moving them along and then pointing to them and saying, this is what I did? Are you working to create an environment? But I am very clear that I was the person who was called to voice that because I was one of the few people in that room who didn't work for the
Mm.
company. So it requires people like me to hold them accountable, to say what needs to be said. But understand, this me here, it took all those types of experiences and being on the receiving end of that to understand my power and to become the warrior that I needed to be. But I'm a warrior in love. I didn't diminish his accomplishments, I didn't take him down, I didn't respond in a way that was disrespectful. I just came and just said, hey, what else are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's a fair question. And he had to say, I had not thought about it from that
Yeah.
perspective. And there's no
No.
shame in that. That's a good thing. So now that you are thinking about it, now the divine can operate and pour into you that creative flow so that you can come up with some ideas on how to be more inclusive if that's your goal, better allyship if that's your goal, and to make the place that you're in charge of one that is more welcoming and receptive to all
Yeah.
who are there. Because I have to say that because my first job, I was placed on the diversity committee because that's what it was called back then, when I was just 2 years old. And the definition that they gave us for diversity, I was like, well, with that explanation, and I was the only Black woman in the room, I was like, this room is diverse. Everybody in here is from a different place. Everybody went to a different type of school. Everyone here went to or had some different types of experiences in their home life. Some people had parents, some people basically raised themselves. I mean, based on that, that's not exactly what we're going for. You understand what I'm saying? What we're going for is being able to see the value and the love and the contribution of
Yes,
every
yes,
person
yes.
for the betterment and the good
Right.
of all. I'm pushing this hard because I am telling y'all, you've got to be in a coma to not understand that our world is at critical
Oh my God, yeah.
mass.
Absolutely.
So
We are at critical mass. If we do not get ourselves together, we are going to
Yeah.
destroy
And if we don't
ourselves.
learn that it all stems from love and get our
Yes.
head out of our asses, excuse my language, and start seeing the light, we're
I'm
all
like so
Yes.
surprised. Like, Michelle, you dropped the Krista said we gotta watch our language. And so I've been really
What
good
she
at
did, she just said
dropping
two
bombs.
words.
Normally it's me, but I was listening to her. But anyway, which is fine. So here's the thing. It takes these conversations, which right before you jumped on, Lanita, I was telling Michelle, I stopped doing networking events. I strategically did because and I'll tell you what, I am sick of going into networking groups saying that we really believe in diversity and inclusion, and you have a couple of this sprinkled in with the majority of that, or a couple of this sprinkled in with, and that's reality. So I plan on creating a space which is actually diverse and inclusive. But let's talk about, and I was on a radio station and I went on a tangent about this yesterday, but to your point, we're all talking about diversity and inclusivity. But you said adding value and bringing the gifts to the table. And that's what's not happening. You may hire people that don't look like you. You may hire different walks of life. But if you're not listening from their lens, if you're not taking from their experience and what they grew up, if you're not, having an actual seat at the table so that they are heard and their opinions are valued, that's not inclusivity or diversity. That's just filling a quota, which I see so
yes.
often.
And that's wrong.
But it happens because people are too afraid to have this conversation. Like me looking at Lanita. So what's it feel like to, be, in an elevator having a white woman grasp their purse because you're a Black person? I had the conversation with somebody. I'll never forget the moment I realized I was afraid of Black men. Now, mind you, I grew up on the streets. I will tell you, I identify as my core family, the people who I love, as people of different backgrounds other than my own. However, I had to look at the implicit bias, the fact that in the 90s you had cops arresting Black people 24/7, and now I'm young, right? Because I'm like two, just like Lanita, and I'm watching this. So of course I'm going to have the implicit bias. The only difference is I'm willing to say, yo, I had to look at that. I had to recognize that, and then I had to do something with realizing that I had been conditioned to be afraid. So now what do? I immerse myself with people. I ask them questions. I learn. I'm curious. But if we don't have these conversations to say, what did it feel like? Then we are going to seemingly come from a place of trying to make things better, but we're not going to.
No, because we're not having the honest
It's gonna get
conversations.
we have to get messy to heal.
Well, I agree, but I will also add these things. Speaking from my personal experience, these conversations, I don't mind having them all day, but there has to be a reason. There has to be something that happens
Yes,
afterwards. This can't just be us come together, have this conversation, and you go right back to behaving
I
the
agree
way
with
Mhm.
that you
that.
did. Right? And I am the type of person, I honestly do not mind when someone comes and says just straight out, because I've had this at least twice. Lanita, I need your skin. I can't have a bunch of white women and no representation. Sister, I hear you, but what happens after that? So I'm in the room and I've given you the diversity. I've given you the opportunity to point a finger and say, I'm here. What do you plan on doing with that? Is this to open the door for someone
Mhm.
else? If it is, that's great. But if it's not,
Yeah.
that's a no for me.
Well,
And why is no one else coming into the
but
room? Why did they have to come and find
No,
you? Why is everyone too
right.
afraid to be in the room if that's the case?
Right. And we need to talk about that
But
as
what
well.
you said to me when we first met, because I'll never forget, because it's burning into my brain. I'm like, me and Lynn need to create this organization, because you're right. Is you're like, Kerri, we don't have these conversations, because where do you go after for healing once you start to open that? Because once you have that awareness, what do you do with that? And so, again, like, I grew up hard. I could become cold as soon as I cracked open. Where did I go with that mess? I mean, I leaned into drugs and alcohol, right? But the reality is, if we're having conversations and there's not a safe space for people to then start to reconcile and work with their implicit bias, if they can't recognize, the wounds that they've stuck down and literally, what is it, disassociated from, and now we just opened it, then we make more of a mess, because we don't have the structure in place to make sure that people are actually healing, and that I
Mhm.
respect. And I think, that's why you and me are in each other's lives in so many ways, because at some point we have to create that space, right?
Yeah. Uh, just to go back to the purse grasping. This was pivotal as I looked back at the memory, and I'm glad that you guys had me flash back to that, because it's what opened up me learning about energy versus seeing a person, what color their skin is or what they look like. It was more about energy. So when I was 17, I was, and Lanita will know where this is. I was driving in Coconut Grove by myself in my little VW, my beautiful little bug, and I went one block too far. Oh, your battery's about to die. I'll go really fast. I went one block too far, and two black punks came and reached their hand into my window and ripped my chain off my neck. And I, from that point on, started being very afraid because I walked up and there was a group in my car robbing my car, my stereo, which back in the day was a big thing. And so it made me start questioning and looking. And yes, I'll say at a group of people because that was who did me wrong at that point. But being able to look back, being from where I am now, and this was a few years ago, looking back in the energy and going as you're walking, as you're a woman, whatever, you're walking down the street, whether you're a man, you're a woman, what if there's energy coming towards you and you feel that it is negative and something is nudging you to cross the street, cross the freaking street.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter color of skin or gender. If the energy coming at you is wrong, move, get out of the way, protect yourself however you need to, but move, do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get tripped up. on both sides, right? Because I can only imagine being somebody where you're walking and someone grabs their purse. But now doing the work that I've done for myself and working with clients, now I can go, what happened to them? Not to excuse them, but what had to happen to them to make them so afraid?
Yeah.
What's their backstory of why they're doing that?
Well, I mean, without going too far into this, we can
Right.
touch on this next week.
Yeah.
I would say at the end of the day that is the reason you and I do the work we do with our clients, is
Mhm.
because we teach our clients how to trust themselves. And in trusting yourself, you know how and what you need in any given moment. And you don't make the decision based on anything other than your internal narrative that tells you that you need to take care of yourself. Hi, gorgeous.
Yes.
No, yeah, I know we went over, but
Sorry.
Yeah, this is so good. So you're coming back, right?
That was actually not your fault. I didn't realize that my battery was that low. Otherwise, I would have bought my charger over here.
you're good.
God.
But no, I was just saying, she was sharing her story, and I said ultimately all three of us, the reason we teach and do the work that we're doing is to help people learn to trust themselves, so that whatever decision they make, it comes from a place of love and safety for themselves and what feels good for them, rather than projections, narratives and beliefs that have been imbued and embedded into us by society. So
Absolutely. So Lanita, when are you coming back?
Whenever
Couple
you
weeks.
have me, this has been wonderful.
so good. I love it.
Oh,
It's
I
been
love
great.
it. Yeah. Great.
All right. Well, Lanita, tell
episode.
everybody we'll have your information, because of course Krista reigns in us cats. But where can people find you?
It's my website, which is my name, LanitaMitchellBlackwell.com. And from there, we can connect on all the social media. You can follow my blog, and hopefully one day we'll meet in person.
I love
Oh,
it.
love it. And what about you, Miss Michelle Barone?
I can be found all over social media at Moksha Grace, and you can also go to my website, mokshagrace.com. And we can meet, we can talk, and I have something special planned for March, but I won't divulge that yet.
I love
Stay
that.
tuned.
All right, guys.
And
My
Kerri.
name is Lewis. You can find me at KerriLewis.Coach. And I am in deep gratitude for Lanita's and Michelle's presence today, and for yours. And remember, you ultimately are responsible for your own experience in this world and in this life. So I hope you grab some information from today and apply it. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Lanita. Thank you, Kerri.
Thank